Good.
Okay. Welcome, Leon. This is great. Thank you for joining us on the call. And this is our session on legal issues with the Virtual School of Internet Governance. And welcome to the session. It's going to be roughly an hour long or whatever you feel comfortable with. So, for the benefit of those listening to the session, if you don't mind, if I can read your bio. It says Leon Sanchez is an intellectual property attorney who graduated from the UNAM in Mexico City. He is also a postgraduate studies uh, on intellectual property at the UNAM and internet law at Harvard Law School. Since 2006, he has been a partner with Fulton and Fulton, a law firm specializing in intellectual property and IT law based in Mexico City, and is the head of the intellectual property division. Mr. Sanchez is also the vice chair of the ICANN board of directors and a member of the several boards, both on the profit and the not-for-profit sectors. Since 2008, he has been admitted to a professor as the on intellectual property at the UNAM Law School. He has also been an advisor to different government bodies that include the Digital Strategy Coordination Office of the Mexican Presidency and the Special Commission on Digital Agenda, and the IT of the Mexican House of Representatives and the Science and Technology Commission of the Mexican Senate. He drafted in the Internet Users' Rights Protection Act for Mexico and has been very active on issues such as ACTA, SOPA, TPPA, and other initiatives on the same kind, always advocating to defend the users and creator rights in order to achieve a good balance between regulation and freedom. Welcome, Leon. This is great. Thank you so much. Let me turn to your slideshow. And since I have control of the slides, you can tell me when to turn to the next slides. So over to you.
Thank you so much, Glenn. It's really great to be here with you and to share, a grain of salt with your students. I admire what you are doing with the Virtual School of Internet Governance, and I definitely commend you for that. So, if we can go to the next slide, please. I would like to go through the agenda of our session. So, to begin with, I would like to talk about some myths about or surrounding the legal aspects in regard to internet governance and, of course, the internet itself. Then I will walk you through some general aspects. These, of course, have been thought to be, as its name says, very general. I know that legal intricacies could vary very much from one place to another. So this is thought to be, again, something from a very general perspective and not anything specific. Then I would like to talk about the Internet Impact Assessment Toolkit, which was developed by ISOC, and maybe go through an example of how we can use or explain how we can apply this Internet Impact Assessment Toolkit. And then finally, of course, this is a recorded session, so questions and answers. I would definitely would like to receive any questions that you may have on the topic and have to answer them offline and hand the answers to Glenn so that he can provide you with these answers. So if we could now move to the next slide, please, Glenn. Thank you. So the objectives for this session is that I hope that by the end of this module, you will be able to bust a couple of myths around internet regulation, to identify general considerations on regulation affecting the internet, understand the Internet Impact Assessment Toolkit, and apply this Internet Impact Assessment Toolkit to a real life case, and also understand the importance of informing lawmakers and use a multi-stakeholder framework to draft regulation that may affect the internet. So these are the five objectives that I've drawn to this session, and we will begin with the myths. So if we can go 2 slides ahead, please. So one of the most common myths around internet regulation and legal aspects is that the internet is not regulated. And this is absolutely false. Uh, Regulation is technology neutral. This means that regulation deals with conducts, not with means. So, being the internet a mean to do or to perform different conducts, it is regulated so far as the conducts that you perform over the internet are regulated themselves. So all regulation applicable to physical also applies to digital. So this is, again, I think one of the most important myths to bust and to keep in mind. If you apply this principle of technological neutrality to regulations, you will then identify whether you actually need to regulate something that is internet specific, or if you could apply the framework that is in place to any conduct that is performed over the internet. Next slide, please. Go ahead. Another myth is that regulation breaks the internet. This, again, it is, in my view, false. Bad regulation may indeed break parts of the internet, but regulation itself doesn't break it. We've seen examples of some regulations that haven't been thought deeply enough or designed with the principles of a free internet in mind. And those initiatives or those regulations have in fact harmed some parts of the internet. But as one of the principles of the internet shows, when there seems to be a blockage of the network, then you'll route around. And this is what happens also with regulation that tries to break the internet. Users will route around it and find ways not to break the law, but to at least be able to continue to carry out whatever tasks they need the internet for in the most legal manner, so to speak. So again, the regulation itself doesn't break the internet, but bad regulation could indeed break some parts of the internet, hence affecting the overall ecosystem. Next slide, please. So another myth is that regulation is only for governments to make. And this is also false. While governments are, of course, the leading actor, and in every country, of course, we have lawmakers and bodies that are dedicated to crafting these regulations. When it comes to regulation impacting the internet, all stakeholders should be involved. I think that you've studied through the course of this virtual School of Internet Governance the meaning and the meaningfulness of having all stakeholders involved in different processes. And lawmaking, regulation, crafting is not the exception. If you want to craft a regulation, if you want to build a law that is balanced, well crafted, well thought, and that prevents unintended consequences or breaking the internet, you should definitely involve all stakeholders and the different groups that could be affected by a regulation impacting the internet. So again, uh, what some people think and some others want us to think is that regulation is reserved only for governments to make. What we've learned through exercising the multi-stakeholder model is that this is not the case. We should all be involved and we should all take part in crafting the regulations and laws that could affect the internet. Next slide, please. So the last myth that I would like to debunk here is that users have no way of influencing regulation. Uh, where I come from, which is Mexico, and it's a developing country, uh, sometimes we feel that we can't actually influence lawmakers. But my experience is that there is a growing influence from users when it comes to drafting laws impacting the internet. And not only the internet, you can see activism developing in many fronts. And of course, the internet related issues is not the exception. So I think that there is a trend of growing influence all around the world in which users are beginning to raise their voices, to participate meaningfully by informing lawmakers and decision makers in governments, and also protesting when things are not going as they expect or they should or they think they should go. So users absolutely have a way of influencing regulation. It is not easy, of course. It takes a lot of work. It takes sometimes risking other aspects in your environment, but it definitely is something that if we want to enshrine the principles of internet governance and the multi-stakeholder model, we should definitely dive into it and try to exercise these principles when it comes to influencing lawmaking. So the next slide is about general aspects, which is 2 slides ahead. And I would like to go through some considerations on how regulation impacting the internet could do that. Uh, I tried to build, this chart of how I see that internet regulation could impact on different aspects. And well, we have, of course, the columns of reach, the subject matter or the process, and well, how ideally or how I see different processes being evolving in the ecosystem. So when you have a law or a regulation that impacts the internet at a local level, uh, so to speak, intellectual property, then this process, of course, should be open, right? Uh, you also have within a reach. Uh, Sorry, I was reading the wrong way the chart. So you can have regulation that impacts the internet locally. You can have regulation that is crafted multilaterally. So it could also have a multilateral effect on the internet and, of course, the international reach of regulation. Now, it's worth noting that some regulations could be crafted at a local level, but their reach could well be either multilateral or international. Maybe an example of one of these laws could be the well known by many GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation of the European Union, which was crafted in an environment which was local, of course, the European Union, but its effect spread internationally to pretty much every country which had European nationals in their territory. So service providers, etc., have been affected by this regulation. So again, this is an example of how a local or a multilateral law in this case could have international effects. So we need to again evaluate how we are going to impact the internet, whether it's at an infrastructure level or an application layer or the different layers that are that form the internet, how these are going to be affected. Then we can look at subject matter. Uh, we have intellectual property regulations that may impact the internet. We have criminal regulations that may impact the internet. We have commercial regulations that may impact the internet. And these are just examples of different regulations that could impact the internet. Of course, these are not the only cases in which a regulation on a specific topic could impact the internet, but these are more or less the more known to be impactful to the internet ecosystem and maybe the ones that have been most widely discussed in different environments. So again, intellectual property, criminal and commercial related laws, I think are good examples to analyze how different subject matters could impact the internet. Then we can look at these regulations from the point of view of the process that they have followed in order to be crafted and enacted. We can, of course, look at open processes. We can look at closed processes, and we can also look at a multi-stakeholder process. Well, you might think, what is the difference, for example, between an open process and a multi-stakeholder process? Well, in my view and in my experience, an open process could work in a way in which, for example, a lawmaker uh, uh, is trying to build a certain regulation, and it posts this initiative for public comment or for public input. Then that body could uh, factor in the different comments, the different input received by the public, and then craft a law. Uh, Whereas in the multi-stakeholder model, I think there is an essential difference in which you are not talking only about public input. You are also talking about the different stakeholders and actors sat at the table directly discussing the topic and trying to build consensus on which would be the best way forward for a given regulation. So again, you can look at this from different aspects. Again, the reach, the subject matter, the process that has been followed to craft a certain regulation, and the way that each of these factors could impact the internet. So with this, I would like to go to the next slide, which is the Internet Impact Assessment Toolkit. As I said, this is a toolkit developed by ISOC, and this toolkit has been developed to help determine whether a policy, technology, or trend will impact the foundation that makes the internet work for everyone. To assess the impact a policy may have on the internet's foundational aspects, this framework or this toolkit suggests that we answer to 5 questions, and I will go through each of them in a moment. And only if these 5 questions are answered correctly, the policy will be considered to be internet friendly. So what we have here, I think it's a very useful tool that could help us both as uh, civil society and also as lawmakers to assess whether the regulation that we are proposing or that we are crafting impacts the internet or and in which way it could impact it, and also if its impact is internet friendly. So let's go through the different questions that we need to answer in order to determine whether a regulation is internet friendly. So the first question is whether the proposal supports a technology neutral general purpose network. So this is a property, as explained by ISOC, that lets us send different kinds of content online from point A to B, whether it's connecting with our friends over social media, playing video games with friends abroad, sending backup files to a cloud server, or whatever we do with the internet. It means that we are trying to take the packets from point A to B. And this is critical, of course, because the internet is simply a network for moving data. We're talking about a vehicle that helps us move data from point A to point B. And if uh, 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 if this technology was designed for only one type of traffic, it wouldn't be able to support the many ways we use the internet today. So this is one of the aspects that we need to protect in when crafting a regulation that could impact the internet. to try to or to avoid affecting this technological neutrality and the general purpose of the network. So if the answer is yes, if we could go to the next slide, please. If the answer to this question is yes, and it does support a technology neutral and general purpose network, then these awards you the general purpose badge. So when we finish answering these 5 questions, you'll see that we collect a set of badges that if we collect them all, then we'll have a friendly regulation that is not impacting the internet in a negative way. So the answer to the first question must be yes. If it is no, then we don't have an internet-friendly regulation. And can we go to the next slide, please? Thanks, Ellen. So question 2 is, does the proposal impact the layered architecture of interoperable and reusable building blocks? Remember that I told you when we were going through the general aspects that regulation could impact different layers of the internet. Maybe not just one, but multiple layers of the internet architecture. So this question relates to exactly analyzing whether this or whatever proposal we're doing would impact this layer architecture and would allow the net to continue to be interoperable and reuse the building blocks that are used to create the network. So again, this is a property that fuels virtually infinite innovation online, whether you're designing a website or building an application, and it lets us keep the internet simple and add features quickly to end systems. And this is critical because it allows the base infrastructure and architecture of the internet to be universally understood by network providers, routers, and application providers. This layer architecture is only reliable because it doesn't change. Everything is built on those solid layers. If we alter this architecture, then we would be altering the whole architecture of the internet, and of course, that would have an enormous impact in how the network behaves. So the answer to this question, if we could go to the next slide, needs to be no. Okay, so if our proposal does not impact the layered architecture and interoperable and reusability of the building blocks, then this is a friendly initiative. And this would award us, if we answer no, would award us the Universal Standards badge. So if we answer yes to the first one and no to the second one, then we are on our way with 2 badges to an internet-friendly regulation. If we can go to the next slide, please. Thanks. So question 3 is, does the proposal respect a decentralized management and common distributed routing system? This is a property that makes sure your email or video stream, for example, can take the best route through independent networks to reach its final destination. Remember how I was referring to the example of routing around when we found any blockages in the road? Well, this is exactly this characteristic in the internet infrastructure and the way it is managed. So it's critical because the internet, as you know, it's a network of networks. So there is no centralized control, no permission from a central authority, and each network can optimize its connectivity due to its unique circumstances or needs. And this makes the internet agile and scalable. So if our initiative or our proposal respects these decentralized management and common distributed routing system, then we have a friendly initiative. So the answer to this question, we can see in the next slide, should be yes. And if that is the case, then this would award us the International Community Badge. So we, again, would go through yes to the first question, no to the second, yes to the third, and we would be, again, on our way to pushing for an internet-friendly regulation. Now, question 4, which is in this slide, is does the proposal respect common global identifiers? So this is the property that helps us get to the correct destination online, whether it is a website connecting to your work server from home, you name it. It's just the ability to connect one device with another end to end, or through the different servers or routers that we need to go through. So, like an address on a postcard, every packet of data has a common accepted identifier, which we call IP address, and this property is critical because without a common way of identifying destinations for each parcel, or for the packets in this case, with need to construct special gateways to help data to get from point A to point B. So we need to draft proposals that respect these common global identifiers. So we could go to the next slide. We'll see that the answer that we need to get to this for this question is yes. If we do that, if the answer is yes, then this would award us the common language badge. And again, we would be just one question away from uh, having an internet-friendly regulation. So we could move to the next slide, please, Glenn. So the fifth question is, does the proposal restrict the open and accessible infrastructure with a common protocol? This property lets us collaborate across the world without national borders. So yes, the internet has no borders, no physical borders. So this open and accessible infrastructure with a common protocol provides us with that borderless virtual world, so to speak. The global network is easy to join. You just need to speak the same language, which is TCP/IP. And once you've joined, then you actually extend the internet itself with your devices, your content, your innovation. So more people, as more people join this network, then the more it grows and develops. So again, this is an aspect that we should protect. So if the proposal restricts this open accessibility to the infrastructure and the common protocol that makes it work, then we wouldn't be looking at a friendly proposal. So the answer to this question, which is in the next slide, should be no. And if the answer to this question is no, then this would award us the fifth badge, which is the global connectivity badge. And as you can see on the next slide, if we actually collect the 5 badges, which again refer to an accessible infrastructure with common protocol, the open architecture of interoperable and reusable building blocks, a decentralized management and a single distributed routed system, the common global identifiers, and a technology neutral general purpose network, then we have in our hands what is considered to be an internet friendly proposal or policy. So this is at a high level how the Internet Impact Assessment Toolkit works, how we should confront the different regulations or initiatives that we are looking at through this set of questions, and of course relate them with the correct answers. If one of those answers doesn't fit the toolkit answers, then we would be looking at a regulation that is definitely not internet friendly. Now, if we can go to the next slide, you can see some use cases. I will provide the links to Glenn, so you can actually have, you can read these use cases. These use cases have been developed by ISOC too, applying this Internet Impact Assessment Toolkit to different scenarios. The first one relates to interconnection and routing. The second is related to intermediary liability. The third one is data localization. And the fourth one is content filtering. if you go through these examples, you'll see how the people within ISOC went through different regulations and examples. They applied these Internet Impact Assessment Toolkit, and they determined whether these regulations were or were not internet friendly. So I definitely encourage you to read each of the use cases. And of course, if you have any questions, I am happy to continue this conversation on offline through email or through the platform that has been set up for the virtual School of Internet Governance. So with that, Glenn, I would like to again emphasize that you can reach me, and I'm happy to answer any questions. And well, thank you for having me. Thank you for letting me share just again a grain of salt in this huge universe of knowledge that you are fostering. And again, congratulate you and your students for this effort. And I hope that this presentation has been useful for you. And definitely keep in touch.
Great. Thank you, Leon. Fantastic presentation. And there's a number of questions. Unfortunately, because we can't do this as a live chat, but the students were queued up for a number of questions. So I'm the only one on the Q&A today. But there's a number of things that come to mind. If I can go back to what you were saying before we talked about the Internet Impact Assessment Toolkit, you were talking about somehow how the stakeholders can be involved with the regulations, and I'm just everyone's equal to a certain extent. So how does the end users have access to influence regulators, given the money that's given to, or the power and prestige given to lobbyists, and how does all the various different groups be able to influence uh, the decision makers in making a fair and open regulation?
This is a good question. And yes, there is some disparity between stakeholders, of course. There are those who have huge resources behind them. There are those who have very little or no resources at all behind them. And this creates, of course, some asymmetry between actors or players. And in my experience, what has proven to be effective in the Mexican context, I don't want to generalize here, but I've again, in my experience, what has given very good results to civil society is to turn digital activism into physical activism.
Hmm.
So when you take the digital protest into real world or physical protest, then you kind of do a claw that closes with these two aspects, right? With digital and physical. So to give you an example from some 12 years ago, there was an initiative to tax the internet in Mexico. So myself, along with other activists, uh, started a protest to try to create awareness in lawmakers that this was a bad law because it didn't foster connectivity, it didn't foster development. It actually worked the other way, right? It would make uh, internet access uh, more expensive, therefore, uh, depriving a lot of persons in Mexico, which is a modest income country, to be able to access the internet. So we protested and we said, no, guys, you are going the wrong way. You shouldn't tax the internet. I mean, if you want to tax some other telecoms or telecommunications because you need the money because you're the government, well, then let's sit together and let's discuss how and which telecom services could be taxed, because they wanted to tax pretty much every telecom service as a luxury service. So again, in 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 an era in which digitization and access to internet has proven to be essential, well, taxing it was definitely going the other way. So what we did is that we started a digital protest. Then we built documents out of voluntaries that expressed why they thought this was a bad law. And then we went to Congress with this protest and tried to inform lawmakers about the impact that this initiative would have in the country's development and digitization. And well, in the end, we achieved that the internet would not be taxed. Other telecom services would be, but the internet itself wouldn't be taxed. So it was kind of a split victory, because we, of course, wanted to avoid any taxation on telecommunication services. But in the end, what we were fighting for, or the essence of the protest, was avoiding getting the internet taxed, and we actually achieved that. So this is again an example of how a digital protest with literally no resources, because all of us were volunteers, and we had no funding from everyone. I mean, we put money from our pockets
Mm.
to carry out this protest, and it was very well received. Again, it had a positive effect, not the best effect we would have wished for, but I think that's again one of the examples that you can actually see how digital to physical, and the collaboration between these two means of protest can actually deliver results.
Taking that one step further, let's talk about the digital tax that they put in. I believe it was Kenya or Uganda, which had a huge reaction, especially from big tech, or the digital tax initiative that they tried to do in France last year. So you have a local tax that's created for raising money for local coffers in a country, but you have big tech taking offense to that. So there's this overreach of very large corporate giants that actually say, well, on the local level, you're coming in with regulations, but we don't like it. So where's the balance between local revenue generation versus big tech that actually, and with the power of the U.S. government, imposing, sanctions, imposing I'm not sure if it's in tune with the WTO, but you could see this as a natural fight that happens. So what's your view on that?
Well, it's a complex topic, I guess. I mean, uh, you've said you've mentioned big tech, and big tech, in my experience, may be a good ally for some battles, but actually, I don't want to say an enemy, because I don't think there are enemies in the multi-stakeholder model, but an opposer, so to speak, in different battles. So when you are fighting along with big tech, they will of course support and provide means for protests, etc., etc. But when you are protesting against something that they are pushing for, then the scenario changes dramatically. So I mean, I don't want to say that you cannot trust big tech, but I would think that it is natural within a multi-stakeholder model to have different views depending on the topic that we are talking about. So I think that big tech should uh, be very careful how they handle these interventions at a local level, because my view is that many governments are beginning to see big tech as a threat in many ways. And when governments feel threatened, they use what they have in their reach, which is lawmaking power, to try to defend themselves. And if we create this spiral in which big tech pushes against governments and governments push against big tech, then I think we are going in the wrong direction.
Mm.
We should shift this spiral of, of negativity, so to speak, into a positive spiral in which we could find ways in which governments and big tech could collaborate and actually establish positive outcomes, not only for the companies and the governments, but also for civil society as well. And I think there is a formula there that we can explore and find and try to put in place. But if we continue down this trend of big tech exercising their economical power and market power against governments, well, I think that's not going to take us anywhere. And ultimately, the most affected will be those in between, which are the users.
Great, thank you. I want to turn to the second half of your presentation where you leaned on the ISOC 2021 action plan. And in that was this fantastic new concept called Internet Way of Networking and the Internet Impact Assessment Toolkit. Now, I think this has shades of what Mozilla Internet Health Report actually talked about. It has similar type of insight platform approach. Now, what they say in their report on their site that they're looking at training 200 people and coming up with 4 policy making processes. Do you see that the ISOC measures as being one of the leading concepts of dealing with doing an assessment, or do you see, and I mentioned Mozilla as well, but do you see other organizations that are doing something similar, or do you see this is I guess a game changer?
I think this is a game changer. I think ISOC did a great job in putting this toolkit together. Uh, of course, there might be other efforts at different levels and in different organizations, but I think that no one had achieved what ISAC achieved through this impact assessment toolkit, which was to put it in very standard language that everyone can understand. It is
Mhm.
a non-technical language, it is a non-legal language, and it helps you uh, assess the possible impact a regulation may have on the internet by answering these simple 5 questions and saying, okay, if your answers were the right ones, then you are looking at internet friendly regulation. If one of them is missing, then you are definitely not in the right way and you are not looking at internet friendly regulation. So again, I think that what ISA built here is a breakthrough. It's a game changer, as you said, and I would really much look forward to seeing how different organizations, law-making bodies, decision-making bodies actually implement this
Mm.
framework or this toolkit to evaluate whether their decisions are hurting or breaking the internet or they are in the right way. So yes, I think it's. I mean, you know that ISOC has a very important network of chapters around the world.
Right.
So I think one of the things that the chapters should do is to try to push or foster at least first creating awareness about the existence of this toolkit, and then informing the different decision makers on how they can apply this toolkit to the decisions that they are taking or regulations that they are crafting.
Great, thank you. You know what I'll do is I'll put those links. I showed it very quickly. We hyperlink to the internet site on one of the elements on routing, but I will add that to the into the just playlist. We'll, after this recording, we'll add it to the playlist of all the sessions from Group B, and again we'll make an announcement on the student list of Group B as well. We're looking at having representatives from ISOC speak on the Impact Assessment Toolkit in future groups. We did have Kevin Maynell speak on Manners, which is one of their projects. And we look forward to seeing how, as supporters of ISOC, how we can promote this product. But I think we've run out of time, and it's been a fantastic session, and I really do appreciate your time. And what I'll do is I'll conclude it today, and I will share with you the recording. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Glenn, and thanks to your students. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to them, to talk to you, and please count me in whatever effort you continue to build to spread knowledge in the internet ecosystem.